Well, now to give us more insight into the deliberations and the final resolution made at the last Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the Central Bank of Nigeria for the year 2021, I have Chief Executive Officer of Cowry Asset Management Limited, Johnson Chukwu. Many thanks for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, David, for having me.
Now, let's start off with the efficacy of this action of the Central Bank of Nigeria. It has kept or left the rates unchanged for quite a while now, stating the stance of either tightening, loosening, and then the retention of this rate. It says, well, this is the best move to consolidate in all of the efforts which have led to the economic stability we are gradually getting a footing of. This necessarily didn't come to you as a surprise, like so many analysts predicted we were going to end the year 2021 with the same rate, right?
Yes, it did not come as a surprise to me. If you look at the macroeconomic environment, the two major parameters to measure economic performance are moving in the positive direction. So, and we know that any change in current monetary policy framework will certainly affect one of those two major economic measures. If you look at the GDP, for instance, which is a critical measure of economic performance, you observe that GDP has consistently increased for the past 4 quarters. In the last quarter of last year, that's fourth quarter of last year, the GDP turned positive with a growth of only 0.11%. And by the first quarter of this year, it was 0.51%. We got to second quarter, it grew by 5.01%. And in the third quarter, we saw a growth of 4.03%. And then if you look at the inflation rate, we've seen inflation moderate from a high of 18.17% to current rate of 15.59%. And so if you want to change any of the parameters you want to tighten, if you tighten, you're going to see a further a reversal of the economic recovery we are witnessing. And if you loosen, you're going to see a further a reversal of the current inflationary trend, which we are seeing a downward movement in inflationary pressure. So, and that's why the Monetary Policy Committee has erred on the side of caution to say, look, current policies are actually supporting one, economic growth. At the same time, we are seeing a moderation in inflation rate. So, the most appropriate thing is to keep the policy framework as it is, the monetary policy framework as it is, because any tugging of those policies will mean that either you want to grow the economy at a faster rate at the cost of inflation, or you want to fight inflation at the cost of economic recovery.
And talking about the severity of inflationary pressure Nigeria is dealing with at this point in time, we're still yet to reel it down to single figures. But globally, we see countries also dealing with very sharp levels of inflation. But in terms of reining it in now and bringing some level of caution, how do you think we can achieve that, looking at the supply chain constraints we have at this point in time, infrastructure challenges, and a whole lot more? So we have this differential which plays out on paper versus the reality of how we have some ease in the markets today. Your thoughts?
Yes, you have to recognize what is pushing the inflationary pressure, what is sustaining inflationary pressure. If you disaggregate the inflation figure for the month of October, you realize that food inflation was 18.34%, whereas all item inflation, that is core inflation, excluding volatile food item, was only 13.24%. So that means the pressure as it stands today is coming from food inflation. If we address the challenges associated with food supply, food production, we're going to see an inflation figure that should already be at this higher, just lower double digit. And then the other factor you have to deal with is the exchange rate. We've seen a depreciation of the currency for quite some time, and that's the pass-through effect of the depreciation of the local currency is that you're going to see an import-induced inflation because prices of imported items, when translated to local prices, will actually move up. So, but let's start from it's largely what I mean those things that within the of the displacement of metals with this food. So, because of that, current function the actual demand of the population. I have food inflation at we can answer by fighting issue of insecurity and fighting the logistics challenges of taking goods, food items from where they are produced to where they are largely consumed. If we don't address that, you're going to continue to deal with a double-digit inflation as we have today of 15.959%. Otherwise, the drag we even have of a lower inflation rate is coming largely from core inflation, which is those nobody can do to inflate drastically to a single digit if you don't address the issue of food inflation.
Now, Mr. Chukwu, let's also talk about some of the interventions we have seen from the Central Bank of Nigeria, the disbursement we've had in terms of supporting manufacturing, the healthcare sector, entrepreneurship, looking at rice, soya beans, sorghum, wheat, a whole lot more. These are intensive efforts to ensure that we have these sectors of the economy strategically positioned. But at the end of the day, irrespective of the resilience which we've seen the Nigerian banking sector show, do you think the banks can continue heavily with the level of credit accessibility we have at hand? How difficult do you think we would have to maneuver through, especially looking at stronger or much more aggressive credit allocations?
Well, in the first place, the sectors you then mentioned, or the subsectors you mentioned, which are largely agricultural sectors and the manufacturing sector, are largely supported by the Growing Finance Initiative of the Central Bank. That means Central Bank came up with a couple of funding arrangements to support the critical sectors, agricultural sectors, supporting like areas like products like rice farming, soybean farming. But unfortunately for the country, again, the insecurity situation we have is neutralizing the impact of this low funding that are available to critical sectors. If you look at for instance, the GDP figure for the third quarter, you realize the agricultural sector growth rate has moderated further from 1.3% to 1.22%. And despite the fact that agriculture accounts for almost 30% of the GDP. So if you are seeing consistent moderation, as we've seen in past quarters, in agricultural growth rate, it simply means that the impact of insecurity is negatively affecting the support, the financing support that is coming from the central bank. As per bank station of credit, the banks, yes, we've seen a growth in the banking credit, but they are largely going to sectors outside those critical sectors. The funds going to the critical sector are coming from central bank. They are intervention funds by the central bank, and those funds are coming as sub-market rate. I mean, the central bank, as a part of its response to the COVID-19, had to moderate the rates of development finance support from 9% to 5%. So the banks, as it stands today, the central bank is already asking for repayment of some of these loans. Globally, central banks are beginning to adopt a tapering approach, moderating the level of financial expansion, monetary expansion through monetary policy tools. Central banks are winding down on such expansionary policies. The central bank in US, the US Reserve Bank, say they are going to start from the month of November, tapering, that is reducing the rate of bonds, the volume of bonds they are buying in the market. So they're gradually winding down on such intervention funds. And I think the Central Bank of Nigeria is also considering that approach, but it's also cautious so that it does not disrupt the economic recovery, the very fragile economic recovery we're currently witnessing.
And do you see us also aggressively looking at investing in the non-oil sector, especially with regards to improving our foreign exchange generating capacity? And surprisingly as well, or not surprisingly, the CBN, the MPC did not necessarily raise the issue around whether or not we will likely see a shift in stance in terms of allocation to broader change operators. That has been silenced, especially in this meeting as well.
Well, let's start from the issue of allocating resources to critical sectors that will improve our export capacity. A lot will come from the fiscal authorities. It's beyond the monetary authorities. I mean, I don't expect the central bank to go start building highways or building rail lines or expanding the port supply facilities when they have the country building deep sea ports. It has to come up from the fiscal authorities. I'm happy that the fiscal authorities also consider the fact that we do not have the capacity to build some of this infrastructure from budgetary allocation. So it's before you can actually get to a point where we have multiple products we can export, we must be in a position to produce. First, to produce products that meet global standards. Two, to produce those products that are costive to what obtains elsewhere in the world. And for you to achieve both, you must have the infrastructure support that will enable such production. Without the infrastructure support, you are not going to produce competitively. So you cannot even produce things that can compete with import from other countries, talk less of exporting to other countries. Then on the BDC segment, I want to believe that in the meantime, the central bank government's position was quite strong. Its comments were quite strong. That it might take some time for them to reconsider their views as it relates to the BDCs. But when the capacity of the central bank to intervene in the market further improves, then the central bank governor may now need to consider increasing the channels for distribution of availability of FX. And that's where the BDCs will come back into play, because these BDCs provide multiple channels for distributing FX, particularly in the informal sector. And if you have those multiple channels, you're going to bring down the differential between the official market rate and the parallel market rate. But in the meantime, like I said, his comments were quite strong. I don't think the kind of comments he made when he took out those BDCs are such that he wants to reverse in a matter of months. But ultimately, the economy will need the BDCs just like how the best way in the world to make foreign exchange available to those who need very small quantities of foreign exchange for legitimate transactions.
And talking about stimulants as well, to what extent do you think we can also largely silence this noise of forex scarcity? You have the likes of sectors like the aviation sector, which are heavily reliant on all of these, but not necessarily having the volume of forex they need to keep their businesses afloat. Your word to this.
Well, as it stands today, there's no magic central bank can do. Central bank got about 4 billion naira from the capital market, international capital market, from the bond market. The federal government raised about 4 billion naira. We have additional special drawing right that was availed us by the World Bank, IMF. But these are not flows. They are one-off cash flow into the reserve. So it's not the kind of resource you use to to be aggressive in intervention in the market, because you're going to exhaust those inflows or those one-off inflows, and you're back to square one. So I think the central bank is being very circumspect when it comes to intervening in the market, so as to maintain reasonable level of reserve and use those reserve to give, some level of confidence that look, we have the reserve to meet demand. But if the central bank become aggressive in intervening the market, you're going to see appreciate the currency, but it will not be sustainable until our balance of trade turns positive and we have consistent balance of trade, and then possibly balance of payment where foreign portfolio investors are coming back into the economy, or capital flow from foreign investment coming to the country. The central bank intervention in the market is going to be very moderate, so as to maintain some level of stability in exchange rate. But that aggressiveness that we would desire will not happen. And if it does happen, it will be one-off, it cannot be sustained, and then you can actually see a reversal of the exchange rate, and you see a downward movement in Naira rate if the central bank loses capacity to intervene in the market.
And one of the aggressive realms we've also seen the CBN also perform quite strongly and commendable is the area of non-performing loan rates. We have seen a strategic and aggressive move towards ensuring that we have a we bring this down to the barest minimum as much as possible. But within the realm of economic recovery, anything can happen. We've seen the COVID-19 through curveballs. Ahead of 2022, what sort of initiatives or plans would you also like to see in place that would also help us rein in the non-performing loan rates in the country? It's really difficult for the average businessman to maneuver through, especially within these times, irrespective of the recovery we have in the market.
David, in the first place, the current level of non-performing loan, as far as I'm concerned, may not really mirror the actual level of weakened or challenged credits. Remember, the central bank asked the banks to grant some forbearance to their credit customers as a result of the COVID. So you need to be sure that those credit customers are actually performing. If if the banks have granted them extended payment terms or restructured those loans, and the fortunes of these companies have not improved, so their cash flow has not improved, their revenue have not improved, then you'll be surprised that once the forbearance period elapses, then you will see an uptick in the level of non-performing loans. For you to bring down non-performing loans, the economy must be buoyant, so that businesses will actually be earning enough revenue. You must have strong consumer demand. We have very weak consumer demand today, and without strong consumer demand will only come from improved purchasing power of consumers. We have weak purchasing capacity by consumers, so you have very weak consumer demand. So it then means that the current level of non-performing loans is not a full reflection of the strength or the quality of risk assets in the economy today. You may actually have a lot of delinquent loans that are currently masked under some level of forbearance by the banks. It is when the forbearance period elapse that we can determine whether the current non-performing loan level is a real situation we have in the country. As it relates to what the central bank can do, I had mentioned earlier there's a limit to the effectiveness or the capacity of monetary authorities to intervene in some sectors of the economy. You need to have complementary fiscal policies that will spur economic growth, that will spur capital flow into sectors of the economy, that will spur new investment into the economy and create jobs. And the jobs will obviously lead to higher level of demand in the economy and higher level of consumption, which will support business activities and support production.
We are wrapping up our conversation at this point in time. One of the notes for the day we also saw is the positive performance of the equities market in the review period, looking at the all-share index and market capitalization increasing as well. But now, in a sum, bringing to fore the agenda of 2022, the highlight or one of the issues we have to look at is the fact that the MPC or the CBN or government at large has to now look at unorthodox tools which would be used to stimulate and drive the economy. Do you think we still have any more arrays or new wings to bring out to the fore? Do you think so?
Well, as it is to what the tools available to the central bank, a lot of them have already been deployed. What will happen next year will depend on how the fiscal authorities respond to some of what has now been presented as the major policy directions of the government in 2022, one of which is the issue of subsidy on petroleum products. Several ministers have said the government will take out subsidy on petroleum products. Should that happen, that will further enhance the capacity of the monetary authorities to manage exchange rate pressures. And exchange rate pressure, should it moderate, will also lead to a moderation in inflation rate. This is basically what's going to happen. The demand for petroleum products will go down drastically if the government takes out the subsidy next year. And that means the pressure on the foreign reserve as it relates to outflow supply need to fund importation of petroleum products, which account about 15% of current import bill of the country, will moderate, and that will enhance the capacity of the central bank to intervene in the money foreign exchange market. It will also lead to strengthening of the currency, and a strengthening of the currency, like I said, has a transmission effect on import-induced inflation. So you're going to see a moderation in inflation, and the capacity of the monetary authorities to intervene in improving the exchange rate, improving the monetary interest rate, improving the inflation rate will be strengthened. So a lot will depend on what happens at the fiscal end of the spectrum.
Lastly, Mr. Chukwu, now let's also discuss the overall outlook for both global and domestic economies. The projection is that these will remain upbeat, but there's still the significant downside risk clouding the path of recovery, looking at the COVID-19 and new cases coming into the fall. So this continues to threaten whether or not we'll likely see all of this prospects turn to the real economic change we'll see in the market. What's your thought? Are you optimistic we'll likely see the global economy and our domestic economy remain upbeat?
Yes, if you look at the IMF projection, IMF is just projecting that the global economy will grow by 5.9%, just a slight moderation from a previous projection of 6%. It will largely be driven by emerging economies, which are expected to grow about 6.4%. Then, if you consider the fact that even if you look at oil output, the U.S. has started releasing oil from its strategic reserve, because global production has actually gone up drastically. Global production of goods have gone up drastically because virtually all the Western economies have reopened, despite the fact that we are seeing possibly a fourth wave of COVID-19. But remember that most Western economies have achieved more than 50% vaccination rate in their countries. So you are beginning to enjoy some level of herd immunity in Western economies. The blind spot is on third world countries like Nigeria that have achieved less than 4% or 5% of immunization of against COVID. But remember that global economies are largely driven by the Chinese, the Western country, the US, which is the biggest economy in the world, the Indian economy, and West European economies and Japanese economies. These countries have achieved a reasonable level of immunization. So in spite of the advent of new strains of COVID-19, I do not imagine this economy will go towards a national shutdown. So the challenge will come from the third world economies. But as it stands today, I think global economy will sustain recovery in the coming year, and growth, even if it moderates, will moderate marginally. If the world economy grows at 5.9%, that is quite huge, and that is to show clearly that global recoveries are quite strong.
And even how contextually unique Nigeria's case is, do you also see even vaccination still remain the biggest index of how we'll recover?
You know, interestingly, the Nigeria's case is interesting because some of the disruption we are coming from logistics supply occasioned by what happened elsewhere. Logistics bottlenecks are still available. They are still being unbottled. But if you look at the Nigeria's social structure, because of our demography, you realize that the level of impact of COVID-19 was not as drastic as it was in Western countries, because we're largely a very young population. Our life expectancy is less than 60 years. So with that level of youthfulness, we know that COVID is most virulent when it comes to very aged people. So I think somehow Nigerians have weathered the COVID-19, given also the fact that we are exposed already to some strains of similar infection from malaria. I don't see a situation where COVID will be a major challenge in the coming years. We could actually have an uptick, but it will never be as drastic as in other Western countries.
Thank you very much for your time on the show today. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Johnson Chukwu. We keep our fingers crossed. We're wrapping up the year 2021. We'd like to see whether or not we can make good all of these prospects ahead of the year 2022. Thank you once again for your time.
Thank you for having me.